All right, so welcome, Elaine, back to the Zoom room for another Art of Letting Go live session. So let's jump into teaching for today. There's an email with a quote as usual, and some related teachings, and then that'll lead us nicely into today's lesson. We'll do the insert today
Yeah,
on what is the second coming, the lesson, and then consider the question of whether psychic powers are desirable, which is our Manual for Teachers question. Okay, so if you can read that quote to kick it off, inline quote from Eckhart Tolle.
being aware of your breath forces you into the present moment, the key to all inner transformation. Whenever you are conscious of the breath, you are absolutely present. You may notice that you cannot think and be aware of your breathing. Conscious breathing stops your mind.
Yeah, so a great reminder, really, literally inspiring quote, because he's talking about breath, inspiration. It's another reminder about the power of what's right under our noses, which most people are completely overlooking, as they desperately seek for some kind of happiness and fulfillment in the external world. So the simple practice of being aware of your breathing stops the always thinking monkey mind in its tracks, opens it to an awareness of presence, or as we call it, pure formless awareness, that can only be experienced in the present moment. And because being aware of the present moment is one of the most powerful ways we can get a taste of eternity while we're experiencing the seeming, quote, reality of time and space that are foundations of this world. So this is the essence of mindfulness, just observing the breath. The whole mindfulness movement was based on two things: being mindful of your breath and being mindful of your body sensations. And those two practices are inherent in the Vipassana meditation practice. So when I did the Vipassana course, I was like, I get it. The mindfulness is just taking this and saying, well, let's strip out all of the Buddhist teachings and the wrapping that it's got, traditional wrapping, and just focus on the practice, which is observe the breath, observe the body. Be mindful of the breath and the body. And it's really Vipassana rebranded for a Western mind that doesn't necessarily like all the Buddhist chanting and the dogma that goes along with it, but actually the practice itself is helpful.
Mm.
So these practices open our minds to another reality. They give us glimpses of another reality. And they open the mind systematically and progressively to the ultimate experience of revelation. Just be aware only of your own eternal, pure, formless awareness that Yeshua calls God. And I had, as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, because people who are watching this video may not have heard the story.
Mm-hmm.
After 9 days of doing mindfulness practices, observing the breath, observing the body in a Vipassana meditation retreat, I did have exactly this experience. The mind opened into this other reality, the transcendent reality of pure formless awareness. And I had an experience of pure formless awareness, and that's where the name came from, by the way. After that, I was like, well, what would I call that? Well, all I could really think of, the most accurate way of describing it was pure formless awareness. So hence pure formless awareness. And then I added perfect love because pure formless awareness is tricky with possessives, pure formless awarenesses rather than perfect love. So pure formless awareness, perfect love. But I had that experience, that these practices opened my mind to this other reality. And, as a result, I, I had a personal experience of God. It was probably the most profound experience of my life. And once you've had that once, you know that it's there. You can't ever be fooled completely by the ego again. It still comes back and it tries its thing, but there's something in you that knows, because you've experienced it, that there is actually this other reality. It actually exists because you experienced it. And that's experiential knowledge. That's what, the mystics and the masters and the saints and the avatars and the great gurus and teachers have all experienced in their lives, because that's the only basis on which they can then teach it. So what opens the way to that is just a simple practice of being mindful of your breath. That's the start. Just observing the breath and the body sensations and finding a state of awareness that transcends them, not being identified with them, not attaching to them, not reacting to them. That's the whole practice of Vipassana. Opens the mind to this pure formless awareness experience. So I thought I'd include a coaching session, which you can listen to. It's where I guided someone through a power breathing technique that will connect you with this eternal awareness. You'll notice I incorporate into virtually every meditation and breath break recording. So we do the power breath, or at least one power breath, pause, hold, and then use the exhale to release. So that's the power breathing technique. So definitely recommend watching that video, listening to it. If you want to just listen to the podcast, the video I actually demonstrate it. So whatever you find helpful. And then there's a Kriya breathing technique detailed in chapter 26 of Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography, which is entitled Autobiography of a Yogi, during the session. So if you're curious about that, you can download the book and read it here. So I was fascinated by this Kriya, and but it doesn't really reveal how it's done. It just talks about the benefits. And then I was fortunate enough to actually meet someone in Johannesburg, of all places, in a print shop around the corner from my yoga studio. Just total chance. The one person in the whole country, pretty much. There was one other guy he taught, but one person who could actually teach this to me. How synchronistic is that? Like, what are the odds, of meeting the one person randomly? I mean, Johannesburg's a big city, millions of people, and I meet the one guy who can actually teach this to me. Bump into him at my print shop, and that's how this works. So within 5 minutes we were chatting, and I told him I was at that point I was still playing serious squash, and I'd been a professional squash player. So he said, "Oh, I'll teach you this power breathing," and then the end of that, he said, "Well, now we're going to do the Kriya." He said, "This might be a bit advanced for you, so just watch." And then I said, "Okay, is this the Kriya that was in Yogananda's book?" And he said, "You know about Yogananda?" I said, "Yeah, I've read his book."
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Okay, my protege has arrived." He was like, "Okay, I'll just give you." He taught it to me, so I was very fortunate to be initiated into it. It's a one-on-one thing, and it is pretty amazing. It's a long periods
We
of
meet
breath
these
hold.
people.
Hmm?
It's how we meet these people, isn't it? It obviously was
Well, it was by divine
your.
design. I mean, you can't. I thought I'd have to go to India. I thought, well, the only way I'm going to learn this is go find the original guy who taught it, who initiated the lineage of it, was a guy called Babaji, Mahavatar Babaji, they call him, who's an unascended master. So he kind of knocks around in a body, but then not in a body a lot of the time. Various bodies, he's not. His mind is freed from bodily limitations, but he can take form when he needs to. So he can be an old man, he can be a young boy, whatever form is useful. Been knocking around the Himalayas apparently for 2,000 years. So he initiated a guy called Lahiri Maasaya into this, who then had a a student called Sri Yukteswar, who then was Yogananda's guru. Yogananda was instructed to go and take this to America, so he went to California, spent 30 years there, teaching it, and that's how it got out, so out of India. So the guru of the teacher of this guy who taught me, his name is Barry, had gone to Yogananda's ashram in California and learned it from him. And then I got it from Barry, and so really you need to pass it on to people who are ready. So if and when you're ready, then but what you need to do is to ready for yourself for it alone. If you want this, here's the power breathing technique.
Right.
Start to master that. Do 30 days of that where you're able to hold your breath for a minute.
Yeah, I have tried it, but I do seem to sort of struggle with
Well,
that.
you got to practice.
Yeah.
You've tried it
yeah,
once or twice, but you got to practice. That's what's practice every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just really got into it, and I just practiced it, and I got into, I was able to do, like, in the end, many minutes, half an hour of breath holding, but it took, probably 6 months of daily practice. I was doing it twice a day. And that sort of kind of broke something. It snapped. I call it going through the breath barrier. It was like some illusion just dropped away. I think a big part of our hard wiring into the body is things like the breath. We think we have to breathe, otherwise we're going to die. And that's just not true. I've experimented with this, and other yogis and so on. They've been known to go for days without air. They bury their head in the sand, and they don't breathe for 24 hours, and they survive. So you don't actually need, because remember, it's all energy. So the oxygen has what they call prana, or life energy. But the idea of this is to access life energy in within. So there's a infinite source of life energy that lies at the base of your spine, called Kundalini.
Oh yeah,
And the
no, I've
idea is
heard
you
of it.
raise that
Yeah, no,
up.
I've tried a bit of it. Yes.
You raise that energy up into the crown, and then it fuels your brain. And that's what this practice does. So then you don't have to breathe, because you're getting your energy internally.
Yeah.
And that's why this practice is so powerful. But you're not just going to get there straight away. So start, if you're keen on advancing. This might help. It'll help your whole spiritual program. Do some.
Okay.
It's only about 10 minutes. 10 minutes of power breathing a day. Is a start, where you do 3 power breaths through both nostrils. You lock. You do the triple lock. You hold. I demonstrated in this video. So you hold, and then see how long you can hold it for. Initially you might only do 20 seconds, 30 seconds, but if you can extend that, then you're preparing for the Kriya, which is to hold your breath for even longer times. Yeah, so if it works for you, there it is. There's the practice, there's the video, there's the instructions. When we come next year in February, we do the Art of Letting Go course again. It's part of that. The power breathing is part of the breathwork technique course that I include. It's part of the Art of Letting Go course. Okay, so check that out, practice, and if you do want to learn the Kriya, then it's something I do one-on-one. So ideally in person, but it probably could be done on Zoom.
Yeah.
Ideal is it's initiation in person. Maybe I'll come to in March next year. Come to Tenerife.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, it's still booked
That'd be
out.
nice.
I've still got it's still booked out.
Yeah, I'll keep it. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to come, and
Absolutely.
even if it's
Yeah.
not for a retreat, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping.
Well, you've got the ocean right in front of you, so you can go for a swim.
Yeah. It's a great place to do spiritual practice.
It is.
Okay, so here we are in today's live session. So the next part of that is to have a look at today's insert 9, I call it, which is on what is the second coming. Okay, so you want to just read that. Assuming I've got the recording device. Okay. All right, so what is the second coming? Let's read it in the alternative.
My true self's second coming, which is sure as pure formless awareness of perfect love, is merely the correction of mistakes and the return of sanity. It is a part of the condition that restores what was never lost and re-establishes what is forever true. It is the invitation to perfect love's message, to take illusion's place, and the willingness to let go of my belief in all the forms of this world, without exception and without reserve. Well, this is the true self's second coming, in which pure formless awareness of perfect love is to correct mistakes and return us to sanity. And it's there to have for us to have a willingness to let go of this belief in the form with no exception and without reserve, as you were talking about in the expression session.
Yeah, without expression, without exception, without reserve means, you've given it your all. You're not holding on to anything. And that's, of course, the difficulty, because we do hold on to things. There's still things that we value in this world. To learn to let it all go and see it all as just an illusion. It's a dream. The images you see, the characters in the dream, none of it's true. It's an illusion produced by the ego mind, designed to convince you that the ego, being your separate self, and the belief in separation is reality. That's all it's for. So the second coming is awakening to who you really are, your true self. That's having gone through the dark night of the soul, you awaken. We talked about the hero's journey. Let's go back there quickly. You go through that, and when the ego dies, what's left is just your true self. And you realize that I'm at one with that self. I have actually never been apart from it, but the illusion of a separate self has dropped away. And then I return to the normal world as an awakened being, as someone who knows the truth. And then I can be truly helpful to others who are on this journey of awakening, become a helper and a mentor and a guide in their journey. And that really is the only point. The only point is this awakening, which he calls here in this section, the second coming. Awakening to our true self. Know thyself. It's the inscription on the temple of Apollo at Delphi. That's the ancient injunction of all the great spiritual teachings. Know thyself. The hero's journey is just saying that's the purpose of your life. Your journey is to know yourself. Who are you really? And then don't just rest with that, as he says. We'll get there at the end of this. But extend that self. Teach that self, because it's everyone's self. The Christ self is everyone's true self. Teach that through your words, your thoughts, your actions. As he says at the end, this needs your eyes and your ears and your hearts and your willingness in order to come into the world and be accepted. It needs teachers of this true self, teachers of perfect love, we call them, teachers of God, to teach this in the world to those who don't know it yet. All right. So happy to go into number 2.
Yeah. It is the all-inclusive nature of my true self's second coming that permits it to embrace the world and hold me safe within its gentle advent, which encompasses all living things with me. There is no end to the release to the second coming brings, as perfect love's extension must be limitless. Letting go lights the second coming's way because it leads to the perception that everyone is one. And so I recognize oneness at last. Well, this is the all-inclusive nature of the true self's second coming that embraces the world, holding us safe and encompassing all things, and letting go will light up this second coming's way. It leads to everything and everyone. And at last we recognize oneness.
Leads to the perception that everything and everyone is really one. Everything and everyone is. I'm not sure that really works. Everything is one. Everything and everyone is one. Everyone is one awareness. So the enlightened state is to look beyond the form and see that every object, every living thing, every human being has the same awareness. We have the same fundamental awareness or mind, because that's our source. There's only one source of awareness. And that awareness preceded any form. When the scientists try and explain consciousness, they struggle because you get to this idea of, well, where did consciousness come from? Where did awareness come from? And they say, well, awareness came from the brain, but then that doesn't explain how the body and the brain got created, does it? So it all just pops into existence from nothing, and then they go, okay, well, we'll take it from there, but they can't explain where that, Big Bang came from. Well, how did that arise then? So the cosmologist scientists will go back so far, but no further. They'll go back to this point. We've now, established scientifically that there was this point of a Big Bang, projection of guilt and fear outwards to miscreate the physical universe. But they'll just go, well, we'll just take it from here. So they're really quite a long way down the ladder of separation. And then they try and make sense of what happened subsequently and try and explain it and justify it with the various rules and laws of science. But they cannot tell you what happened prior to the Big Bang. By their own admission. I was listening to a quantum physicist give a talk at Cambridge, which I've posted before. You can watch it at some point. And he's saying, well, actually, at time t equals 0, which is essentially this, eternity, t equals 0 means no time. Before time began, we have no idea. We have no idea about anything. All our models break down. They all stop. They break down. Quantum mechanics and theory of relativity and anything that seems to describe this physical universe doesn't exist there. And then he just skipped over that. That was one sentence, and he just carried on. But it's like, whoa, just pause there, because if you really pause for thought, you'll see just how profound a truth you've stumbled over. But as Winston Churchill said, most men stumble over the truth and then pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing had ever happened. And that's exactly what he did. Just hurry off. Oh, no, hurry off back into the illusion. And now we want to get a better model of the illusion. That was his whole thing. No, we're going to get a better, what they call a standard model of physics, which is various equations that describe, and it doesn't quite work. They're trying to kind of create the ultimate model that describes the whole universe, and they never will find that. Because you're never going to find unity within separation, are you? It's designed to be separative. It's designed not to make sense. That's the whole point. You're only going to find it in what's beyond these models, in time t equals 0. In other words, eternity. T equals 0 is a state before time was. So that's where we're going. Yeshua's directing us to that, beyond the ego mind that has invented this projection of thought, which is the physical universe, beyond the thought of separation and the individual self and the guilt and the sin and the fear and the attack and all of this that is behind the illusion, lies t equals 0, eternity and infinity. And no matter how much the scientists try, they can't really deny that reality. They've hit on it. At time t equals 0, you can't say anything. Okay, well, what's that then? Maybe that's another reality that none of your models describe, but they get scared of that. And so they scuttle back into the illusion, trying to describe the illusion and the matrix with various clever formulas and stuff. And they ignore the simple truth that they've stumbled on, which is the whole point of all of it. So science can become a spiritual path, just like any other. It leads you to the truth, if you're willing then at that point to accept the truth and abandon all of your models. So then you wouldn't be a scientist anymore. You become a mystic. And of course, the reason that doesn't happen is because they define themselves as scientists. The only one who, I think, transcended that to an extent was Einstein. I don't think at the end of his life, he didn't define himself as a scientist anymore. He transcended that. He was a philosopher. He was searching for the truth. How much of this he intuited, whether he fully, understood this, I don't know. I don't think so. But he was on his way there. He was going into philosophy in the last 20, 25 years of his life rather than science, because he kind of hit the limits of science. He went, well, what's beyond this? And that's kind of the whole point. Your science can be a spiritual path, just like any other path to awakening, if you're then willing to let it go. The path is not the destination. To get to the destination, you don't need the path there. You don't need science anymore if you've awoken to this. It was just a way to get there. So that's an interesting idea, isn't it? That science is just another spiritual path to the truth, if perceived correctly.
If it's like Albert Einstein, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and there's no doubt he was awakened to the truth. But most scientists are too rigid in their ego structure, so they can't entertain the idea of something beyond their limited conception of the world and their models, and they because that's what they define themselves by. I'm a quantum physicist. Well, who would I be without quantum physics then? Well, you might be an awakened being then. That's what you might be. But you can see, I saw it so clearly with this guy. I mean, very bright guy. You don't become a quantum physicist at Cambridge without a huge intellect. Very bright. But the problem is very limited in your intelligence, because he's now directing all of his intelligence into the illusion rather than opening at his mind, saying, well, maybe I just actually don't know, even though we think we know so much about this physical universe now. Maybe actually it's all illusion. Maybe there's something way beyond this. And I'm willing to, to entertain it, to conceive that it's there. And because then you see, he'd have to let go of his identity as a scientist. And that's often the problem. Scientists have egos too, believe it or not. Quite big ones sometimes. Get very attached to the persona and the science, and I'm this and this, and I've written this paper, and I'm very famous because and actually all of that's BS. All of it is just a discovery of the truth, which will lead you ultimately. Science leads you to the same point as any spiritual path, to the point of time 0. Okay, well, what's that then? Before time was, what is? Eternal, infinite awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, we call it. It doesn't matter what you call it, but there's something beyond the dream world. Unfortunately, Yeshua has explained it all so beautifully for us. Now, this is the only teaching that I know that explains the genesis of this world and this universe very clearly. Because science says there was this big bang. Okay, but that explains it on a physical level. But what science can't answer is, why was there a big bang? Why did this happen? because that's a philosophical question. It goes beyond, models and mathematics and science. It's now, you're into philosophy. Why did it happen? That's the question. And then even more profound, a question is, did it even happen? Now you're really starting to get somewhere. Why did it happen? Can then lead you to the ultimate question of, well, did it even really happen? How do I know it even really happened? My senses tell me it happened, but maybe I'm just in a matrix. I'm in a dream world that's designed to convince me that it has happened, and actually there's still this pure formless awareness that lies beyond it. That's available right now. That's, today's lessons. Like, this is available right now. You can wake up to this right now, because it's only available in the now, because the now is eternal. It's never gone away. It's always been there. The now in this world is the closest approximation to eternity that we can find. So when you enter fully in the now, then you're in pure formless awareness of perfect love, in an eternal state of mind beyond time. When I went in, I mentioned it earlier, the Vipassana, that Satori moment, there was no time, no sense of time at all. I couldn't say how long I was there for. Practically speaking, I don't think it was very long, because I had a session to get to. There was a bell, and so if it had been hours, it would have become dark and I would have known. So it wasn't. It was maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but I don't know. There was no time in that state. No time whatsoever. And that was liberation. It was like, oh, there's no sense of time passing. It's just this pure awareness, and it's blissful. Now imagine being in that awareness eternally. The ego can't. It's beyond its conception. We can only experience it, like I did, and many others have, and go, okay, that's it then. It's an experience. It's not an intellectual understanding. My intellect can lead me eventually to the point where you go, I don't know anything. Your intellect, the highest kind of understanding of the intellect, is like, actually, I don't know anything. I just, all of my models and stuff really are nothing. They all break down, because they do. At time zero, I know nothing. It's just pure, formless, raw awareness. That's it. Just that and nothing else. So everything I thought I knew in an illusion just disappears there. The ego, that's terrifying. For your true self, that's liberation. That's what it wants. To merge back into this awareness, to become this awareness and only this awareness forever, for eternity. And let all this, really just nightmare go. It's a nightmare of separation, and all the difficulty and the pain and the suffering and the sickness and the death that go hand in hand with it. All that's just wiped away, and you just remain in this awareness eternally. And that's what Yeshua is pointing us to. That's what every spiritual teaching points to, and that's what science points to, because they get to the same point of like, well, we get to time t equals 0 and we can't say anything. Well, that's exactly the same point as any spiritual master gets to, where they go, I can't really speak about this. It's ineffable, indescribable, as David Hawkins puts it, at the top of the ladder of consciousness, the map of consciousness. Ineffable, pure consciousness, pure awareness. I can't describe it, because it goes beyond description. It's beyond words. It's beyond any models. It's beyond anything that is of this world. That's where this is taking us, which is thrilling for the your true self. The Holy Spirit's like, yeah, finally you're waking up. And the ego's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Yes, it is. That's the whole point. It's the end of your disastrous world of pain and suffering and misery and death. Yes, it's all got to end, because none of that has any place in heaven, in the state of pure formless awareness. All right, so let's carry on with number 2, which is the all-inclusive nature.
That's the one I've just read, isn't it?
Did we read number 2?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. So are you happy with that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So what he's talking about in the second coming is this awakening to this understanding of infinity and eternity. Just another name for the awakening, the second coming. But he teaches using these terms. It's clever because he takes a term. We've heard this in, Christian teaching, and then he reinterprets it and says, okay, so this is another way that I can teach you the truth through this concept of the second coming. Okay, so number 3.
Yep. The second coming ends the lessons that the remembrance of perfect love teaches, making way for the last judgment in which learning ends in one last summary that will extend beyond itself and reach up to pure formless awareness of perfect love. The second coming is the time in which all minds are given to the identity of my true self, to be returned to pure formless awareness in the name of true extension and the pure formless awareness of perfect love.
Okay, so what's he saying there?
Well, the second coming ends the lessons that the remembrance of perfect love teaches, making way for the last judgment in which the learning ends. And that's the time in which all minds are given the identity of true self, to be returned to the pure formless awareness, perfect love.
Yeah. Through extension, the pure formless awareness of perfect love. Beautiful. Let's sit in that. Describing a state. We come into this awareness of true self. And once we're so rooted in the true self, and we know who we are, we know that we are one self and everyone is one with us, then this pure formless awareness of perfect love is there in our awareness. It underlies that true self concept. And then we're prepared for the coming of this awareness, for merging back into this awareness. And then there's no need for a true self or Christ or perceptions, the Holy Spirit, the world all drops away, and we just merge back into this awareness. He describes it as, God takes the final step. So he's preparing us. This mind training is preparing us by helping us to identify fully, wholly, and completely with the true self or the Christ as an intermediate step in the final awakening to pure formless awareness of perfect love. He's saying you need to get here first, because if you don't know that you're one self, you're going to be convinced you're a separate self. Those are the options, and you're still going to be caught up in illusions of time and space. You have to know that you are one self and everyone is actually one with you in order to become aware of this awareness, pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is one awareness. It makes logical sense, doesn't it? You can't have multiple selves and have one singular awareness. So one self goes with one awareness. It's a necessary precursor to this awareness, which is why he's given us this model of the Holy Trinity, saying, well, first you need to, through correcting your perceptions, come into an awareness of this true self, the Christ self, and that will prepare you for the coming of the one awareness, where you merge back into God, which is what he's describing here, the second coming, where everything's gone, the second coming makes way, the true self has come, all of this drops away. And all that will remain is pure formless awareness of perfect love. So the Holy Trinity disappears, and there's only God. There is no Holy Spirit. There's no Christ. There's just pure formless awareness of perfect love. And that's what he's talking about here. All minds are given to the identity of my true self, to be returned into the state of awareness as they truly are. All right, number 4. Happy to move on?
Yes, yeah. The second coming is the one event in time which time itself cannot affect. For everyone who ever came to die will be born in future or who is alive now is equally released from what they made. In this equality, our true self is restored as one identity in which the extensions of perfect love acknowledge that they are all one. And pure formless awareness of perfect love, our source, smiles upon its one extension and only joy. So the second coming is one event, but it's not affected by time. So everyone who came to die will be born in the future, or who is alive now, equally released from what they made. So the true self is restored as one identity. And this is where the extension of perfect love acknowledges that they are all one. But this is pure formless awareness. Our source smiles upon it with joy. Yeah.
Yeah, just a very feel good. I love this section actually. It's very
comforting.
Yeah, he's pointing us to the ultimate truth. And the the step in that is identifying fully with our true self. So you know that you're just one self, not many selves. And you perceive everything from that one self. Even if someone is behaving from the ego in a separated way, you don't mistake that for reality. And that, of course, requires forgiveness. You must let go of your belief in the reality of what they're showing you, the false self. And then this pure formless awareness, he says, smiles upon its one extension. This awareness comes more and more into your mind. You become aware of this awareness. That's what it means when he says it smiles upon its one extension. And it's only joy. When we come into this awareness, the extension, our mind starts to wake up and we go, oh, actually, I'm peaceful, I'm happy. Because my true awareness is returning, finally, after, lifetimes in the dream, being lost in a dream world. Finally, I'm awakening to the light of who I am. All right, so happy with number 4. Let's go on to 5.
I pray that the second coming will be soon, but I will not rest with that. It needs my eyes, ears, hands, and feet. It needs my voice. And most of all, it needs my willingness. Let me rejoice, and I can act in accordance with perfect love's awareness and join with my companions in this innocent awareness. The extension of perfect love is one in us, and we can reach our source's love through it. So we pray that this second coming will come soon, and we'll not rest until we do. It needs all our eyes and all the feet and voice, but most of all our willingness. Yeah.
This is what I said, it's saying don't rest with that. While you're here in time, it needs your participation, your active support, participation. And this becomes then your inspired purpose in this world. What are you here to do? Well, you're here to awaken yourself and to help others awaken.
Yeah.
Using your body, you have now an instrument which can interact in this world. You have a voice, you can act, you can do things. Well, that's very useful to the spirit, because now it can act through you, and it can make things manifest in the world through you that are helpful in the at one-ment. And so you become the avatar, the agent of the spirit in the world. The spirit has now completely taken over the possession of the body. That's what the avatar means. You've given it over to the spirit, and you're completely guided in thoughts, words, and actions by the Holy Spirit, which you recall, this is where he leads us in this teaching. He's saying, your end result will be this. I'm going to read that final lesson.
I am wholly aware now and every moment. I allow my true self to be in charge and follow only its guidance, knowing that it brings me peace.
And then he says, I'm going to read that, just one paragraph.
The remembrance of perfect love will give me the words I need to help me. It will also give me a thought whenever I need one. And if I need only stillness and a tranquil, open mind, these are the gifts I will receive from it. It is in charge by my request. It will hear and answer me because it speaks for pure formless awareness of perfect love, my source and its innocent extension.
So this is the final lesson that's repeated 5 times.
Yeah.
5 times. So this is where he's leading us to a state where we are done through, as David Osman said, we are completely given our lives to the Spirit. Everything's being directed by the Holy Spirit, our thoughts, our words, our actions. We've surrendered, in other words, to the Spirit. Not my will, but thy will be done. And we become the instrument of the Spirit on earth, which is the state that Yeshua attained, the Buddha and some other, masters, where they're just completely being used to do the will of God, or the will of perfect love. And so that's what he's training us for. He's saying God will take the final step. If you're in this state, then you can rest assured that the final step will happen. So it's a done deal. You fully identified as the Christ, your true self, then you've prepared the way for this awareness to come. God will take the final step when you're ready. So he can't really teach us how to do that. That will just happen. But he can teach us how to become fully identified with our true self and let go of the other self, the false self. And that's what the focus of the course is and the curriculum is. So it's this process of awakening from being fully identified with our ego and all its experiences in time and space, to transcending that and being able to see all of these from the perspective of the true self, with true perception or Christ's vision, by letting go of the ego's misinterpretations of all this. And that raises us up into identifying with our true self, and then we're ready for the final step. And that's the Holy Trinity system, really, for awakening. So it's an operating system for your life to help you to awaken to pure formless awareness of perfect love, and ultimately transcend this world and the need for a human life. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
We go over and over it, but the reason why we do is because the ego is thick. It doesn't want to know. It's like, I'm blocked. I don't want to know this, because if I know this,
always, then
it's game over. It doesn't want to know. So we go over and over and over, and we repeat it over and over and over to penetrate it in, to go, okay, it's like it's got to become internalized. So you start accepting that, what Yeshua's teaching us is the truth. It's the only way to live any kind of functional life in this world. If you're trying to find some kind of happiness and peace and satisfaction in this illusion of being a separate self, you never will. It's never going to work, ever. Has it worked so far? No.
No.
Will it ever work? No. This is what he's telling us. You have to The only way is to go above this, rise above the battleground and start identifying with your true self. And the way you do that is by letting go systematically, without exception, without reserve, of all of your current misperceptions of this world. That's the way. Letting go or forgiveness. And the second coming then brings that into being. The second coming is the willingness to let go without exception and without reserve, to awaken to your true self. Okay, so happy with the second coming?
Yes.
We've still got a couple more days of that, so we'll do it one more time maybe. So let's go into the lesson then. Recording going. Okay. So this is lesson 308. You can read that in the original, in the alternative form.
This instant is the only time there is. This moment is the only time there is.
Yeah, I prefer moment to instant because it's more vernacular. You say this moment. So what do we ever have really but the present moment? It's always this moment. As this moment again, and what we've got to learn is that it's always this moment. So we've never been outside of this moment. We've never been outside of the now. In other words, it's always now. That's the obvious truth. It's so obvious that we miss it because our minds are off in the past and the future, thinking about things in the past and anticipating things in the future. And we miss the obvious fact that it's only ever now. And the foundation of all the great spiritual teachings is that truth. It's only ever now. So past and future don't really exist. There's only actually ever now, and there's only ever your awareness in the now. The thoughts of past and future don't really exist. They are part of the veil of illusion that covers over this moment. So the only time there is this moment, and ultimately that moment takes you to eternity where there's no time. So it's an approximation. This moment, being in the now, is the approximation of eternity in this world. It's the closest we can get to being in that eternal state of mind in this world, by being present in the moment, which is why it feels good, which is why it expands us, which is why it's at the foundation of all the great spiritual teachings. Say, just be present, be in the moment. Don't go into the past and the future. All right, but let's see what Yeshua has to say about it in these two short paragraphs. So if you can read that in the original and the alternative. Thanks.
Yeah. I have conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. I have conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. If I elect to reach past time to timelessness, I must change my perception of what time is for. If I choose to reach past time to eternity, I must change my perception of what time is for. Time's purpose cannot be to keep the past and future one. Time's purpose cannot be to keep the past and the future one. The only interval in which I can be saved from time is now. The only time in which I can be freed from time is now. For in this instant has forgiveness come to set me free. For in this moment I have let go to set myself free. The birth of Christ is now, without a past or a future. The birth of my true self is now, without a past or a future. He has come to give his present blessing to the world, restoring it to timelessness and love. It has come to give its present blessing to the world, restoring it to timelessness and love. And love is ever present here and now. And love is ever present here and now.
Okay, so read it from the top in the alternative.
I have conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. If I choose to reach past time to eternity, I must change my perception of what time is for. Time's purpose cannot be to keep the past and the future one. The only time in which I can be freed from time is now, or in this moment I have let go to set myself free. The birth of my true self is now, without a past or a future. It has come to give its present blessing to the world, restoring it to the timelessness and love. And love is ever present here and now.
Oh, there's Kim.
Oh,
Just in time. You can summarize it for her. So
yeah.
what's he saying in paragraph 1 then?
Well, time is eternity. We're out of the past or the future, and it's the only time we can actually really be freed, and this is where our true self is. So if we give our time to this present blessing to the world, and love is ever present here and now, so it's all just at this moment.
Right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the gift of this. It's not somewhere in the future, past. You can only find it right here, right now. It's always there. It's your own true awareness, just available to you right now. So that's why, you know, the now is such a big part of this, of any authentic spiritual teaching, because this is the only time that you can actually become aware of your true awareness, is right now.
Mm-hmm.
When else can you do it? You can't do it in the past. There is no past. The past is just a mental delusion. It's a construct in your mind that takes you away from your true awareness, and as is the future. Thinking about the future means you're not present in the now to your true awareness. You're unaware of that. And so you see how time, the concept of time and your false self are bound up with each other. The false self requires time in order to continue, because it obscures the present moment awareness, which is your true awareness. Very ingenious, really. I mean, the ego's invented a mind job of note. This whole illusion we've got into with time and space, and all the forms and then events that seem to happen in time. What a mind job we've done on ourselves to convince ourselves that the false is true. And yet, all the spiritual teachings and teachers are saying, no, you can't do that, because only the truth is true, and only the truth will ever be true. You can't make the truth. You can only make an illusion that covers over the truth. But the truth is true whether you like it or not, and it's beyond you. You can't destroy that truth. It just is. Fortunately, because if we could destroy it, then we'd be forever lost in our dream. And this teaching is saying, no, well, you're not. It's just a mistake. Recognize it as such, let it go, and then you're free. All right, let's say hello to Kim. Hi, you, Kim. Welcome, just in time to do the lesson.
Hi, sorry, I'm actually in the car, so I'm not going to be able to read per se until I get home. And while I've just been at the airport dropping off my husband, and I'm looking for my parking ticket. So,
right.
Okay. So I'm just going to listen in. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Listen
okay.
In. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, Elaine, if you can do number 2 then.
Thanks for this instant, Father. Thanks for this moment, my source. It is now I am redeemed. I am free now. This instant is the time for your appointed, for your Son's release, and for salvation of the world in him. This moment is the time you have appointed for your extension's release and the awakening of the world in me.
So read that from the top in the alternative.
Thanks for this moment. Thanks for this moment, my source. I am free now. This moment is the time you can have appointed for your extension's release and the awakening of the world in me.
Yeah. So summary of that.
Just this glorious moment is when we are free. And this is where we'll find our true self and our peace, and it awakens us from the world of me.
Yeah. Awakens me from the world of me. That's quite a good description of the whole spiritual journey. Yeah, the world of me, the limited self that's preoccupied with its own desires, fears, problems, expectations, grievances, special relationships, addictions, attachments, and so on. You realize you never were that self. You were always transcendent, pure formless awareness of perfect love, but you just misidentified yourself as this limited character in the dream. But now you're realizing who you really are. That's your awakening. That's your salvation. That's what the whole journey of life is about, is to awaken to that understanding. And as you awaken, what he's saying here is you can only do this in this moment, right now. This is the moment you have appointed for your extension's release. Because it only, people say, well, I don't feel any more awakened this moment than the last. But the point is, only in this moment, only in the now will you awaken. You might not be ready for that yet, but when you are ready, you will awaken in this moment. And the awakening of the world in me. So when I awaken, then I am awakening the world. I'm part of this awakening at one-man process in the world, and I'm then able to extend this awakening into the minds of others because I've awoken myself. So I can now be an agent for the awakening in this world. And I become the way shower, just like Yeshua did. I show others the way who haven't awoken yet. I show them what's possible through the example of my own awareness in my own life. And that's your only purpose. Saying that, that this needs your eyes and your ears and your hands and your feet and your willingness, most of all, to be used as an instrument of the at-one-ment, to be the teacher of perfect love in this world. That's your appointed task. That's your destiny. That's what's going to fulfill you and bring, whatever meaning there is to your life. Accepting that, that's the only way. All right. So, any other thoughts on that? Kim, any questions? Yeah, the key message, by the way, is this moment is the only time. There really is. So it's just another reminder to bring our attention into the present moment. So what I'm saying is, given Kim is probably driving, not able to meditate, shall we go on to the manual for teachers? Do that, and then we'll do a meditation to finish. By that time, Kim's probably home.
Yeah.
How does that sound? You okay with that, Kim?
No, I'm good. Elaine, you're good with that, or you prefer to meditate now?
I don't mind, honestly. I don't mind. No, that's
well,
fine.
Elaine tends to go to sleep,
right.
so then
yeah,
it's actually better to do the mind stuff
first.
and then finish it with that. It's quite a nice way to end the session. So let's do that right now. All right. So,
okay.
You can
Sounds
just listen. If you're driving, if you want to interact and comment or question, then feel free. Otherwise, just listen in.
Okay.
Okay, and you should be home by the time
Thank you.
to the med.
Okay.
All right, so let's jump into the meditation then. Right. Not the meditation, sorry, the manual for teachers. Okay, where are we? Manual for teachers, manual for teachers. is there. Okay. So this one is section 25. There's only four sections left, I think. Nearly through this. And it's another interesting question. That's what these are designed to. These questions are designed to answer questions that might not be covered in the text or the workbook. Are psychic powers desirable? Is the question. So let's go into that. And then if you can read that in the original and the alternative.
Yeah. The answer to this question is much like the preceding one. The answer to this question is much like the preceding one. There are, of course, no unnatural powers, and it is obviously merely an appeal to magic to make up a power that does not exist. There are, of course, no unnatural powers, and I am obviously merely appealing to magic when I make up power that does not exist. It is equally obvious, however, that each individual has many abilities of which he is unaware. However, it is equally obvious that I have many abilities of which I am unaware. As this awareness increases, he may well develop abilities that seem quite startling to him. As my awareness increases, I may well develop abilities that seem quite startling to me. Yet nothing he can do can compare even the slightest with the glorious surprise of remembering who he is. Yet nothing I can do can compare even the slightest with the glorious surprise of remembering who I am. Let all this learning and all his efforts be directed toward this one great final surprise, and he will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to him on the way. I let all my learning and efforts be directed towards this one great final surprise, and I will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to me along the way.
Okay, from the top in the alternative.
The answer to this question is much like the preceding one. There are, of course, no unnatural powers, and I'm obviously merely appealing to magic when I make up a power that does not exist. However, it is equally obvious that I have many abilities of which I am unaware. As my awareness increases, I may well develop abilities that seem quite startling to me. Yet nothing I can do can compare, even in the slightest, with the glorious surprise of remembering who I am. Therefore, I let all my learning and efforts be directed towards this one great final surprise, and I will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to me along the way. So, well, it's talking about the unnatural powers, which is really magic, which doesn't exist. So are they talking about people like clairvoyance and all these people?
Yeah, psychic powers are powers that are beyond the normal range, paranormal abilities.
Yeah.
Telekinesis, clairvoyance, savants, and so on. And we know that these people do exist, and they do seem to have some incredible abilities. But the question is, what are they used for?
Well, they're supposed to, some get in touch with those who've passed on, so they can get in touch with loved ones. But I don't know. Again, I don't know.
Yeah. So if it's used, if these abilities are used for healing, then they can be very useful. But if they're used just to say make money or they're used to actually do evil. You can use these abilities to try and manipulate and control people, then you've lost the plot. And what he's saying here really is that these abilities are nothing. They call them in the East, they call them siddhis, the powers. So some of these yogis and fakirs and stuff have these extraordinary powers. They can levitate, they can melt ice with their body heat and not get cold. They can lie on a bed of nails, walk across hot coals, bury their head in the sand, etc., etc. Lots of these siddhis that develop. But the point is not the siddhis. If they've got caught up in that, then they are false gurus. Because the point is not, oh, look at how special I am because of my powers. The point is to become aware of who you really are. And so the powers are just, they come as a part of that awakening process. And the true master is not concerned with the powers. They're concerned with teaching people who they really are. And if some extraordinary powers come to them as part of that, then that's fine. And if no extraordinary powers come to them, that's also okay, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you know who you are. That's the whole point. So that's just really what he's saying here. So I just let everything be directed towards this one great final surprise of knowing myself. That's the hero's journey again. All my abilities, my skills, my talents, everything that I've learned is directed towards that one great purpose of awakening to who I really am. All right. Happy to go on to number 2 then. Kim, any questions on that? Paragraph 1. No. Okay. So if you can read number 2, Elaine.
Certainly, there are many psychic powers that are clearly in line with this course. Certainly, there are many psychic powers that are clearly in line with this course. Communication is not limited to the small range of channels that the world recognizes. Communication is not limited to the small range of channels that the world recognizes. If it were, there would be little point in trying to teach salvation. If it were, there would be little point in trying to teach awakening. It would be impossible to do so. It would be impossible to do so. The limits the world places on communication are the chief barriers to direct experience for the Holy Spirit, whose presence is always there and whose voice is available but for the hearing. The limits the world places on communication are the chief barriers to direct experience of remembrance of perfect love, whose presence is always there and whose voice I can always hear if I so choose. These limits are placed out of fear, for without them, the walls that surround all the separate places of the world would fall at the holy sound of his voice. These limits are placed out of fear, for without them, the walls that surround all the separate places of the world would fall at the pure sound of its voice. Who transcends these limits in any way is merely becoming more natural. Whoever transcends these limits in any way is merely becoming more natural. He is doing nothing special, and there is no magic in his accomplishments. They are doing nothing special, and there is no magic in their accomplishments.
Okay, and read it from the top in the alternative.
Certainly, there are many psychic powers that are clearly in line with this course. Communication is not limited to the small range of channels the world recognizes. If it were, there would be little point in trying to teach awakening. It would be impossible to do so. The limits the world places on communication are the chief barriers to direct experience of the remembrance of perfect love, whose presence is always there and whose voice I can always hear if I so choose. These limits are placed out of fear, for without them, the barriers that surround all the separate places of the world would fall or at the pure sound of its voice. Whoever transcends these limits in any way is merely becoming more natural. They are doing nothing special, and there is no magic in their accomplishments.
Okay, so what's he saying in this one?
Just as you were saying in the previous, the psychic powers can be helpful to the course, but it has to be seen as magic if they are doing nothing special in their accomplishments. And I'll skip the middle bit. Oh, okay. So it's the communication bit is not limited to this small range of channels the world recognizes. So is that, you mean, just our different religions and our news?
Well, it's a frequency, really. I mean, you what we see and what we hear are a very limited spec on the electromagnetic spectrum. They're a very tiny little range. You know, we operate in this little range, but actually outside of that lies on the electromagnetic spectrum, huge range that we're not aware of. You know, ultraviolet light, infrared, and so on, and then various frequencies of sound we can't hear. So what he's saying is that actually you're in this very limited little, narrow channel, and you think that's reality, but actually go beyond those barriers and you start seeing a lot more, which is what, psychic people do. They just are not quite as limited as the rest of us. And then they're seen as, unusual, abnormal, because they're just seeing, they're opening up to a bigger range, which is really part of the awakening beyond the physical world. Well, you've got to go beyond the range of just believing in your physical senses, haven't you, to start. So that's often what happens. People go into the psychic realms and they'll go astral traveling, and they'll, and it's a wonderful world, but they can get attached to that as well, because that's not the truth either. It's just another level of the illusion. This is why he says, go for your true self. Go for the one self, the Christ self, that transcends all of these cities or powers. I think the key point here is that whoever transcends the limits of the world and the communication channels of the world is actually just becoming more natural, more who they really are. So people like Yeshua, the Buddha, they just demonstrated what it is to be truly yourself in this world, and accordingly they had power given to them, which was very useful in their awakening and in others' awakening. So he's saying we can all be that. It's just who you naturally are. Your true self is naturally powerful, radiant, abundant, giving, sharing, healing. All of these abilities are there, inherent in the true self. So don't seek for the powers, seek for the true self alone above all else, and then the powers may or may not come. It doesn't really matter, because you're not attached to the powers. I used to think, and that's what got me into this. It's like, oh, cool, I'd like to do miracles. These kind of supernatural powers attracted me. I thought, because the ego was still involved and wanted some kind of enhancement of itself. Oh, I'll be like Jesus was, like really powerful, but I had no idea. They're like what the teaching actually was and what was going to be required of me to get there. I didn't know that I'd have to let go of that whole false self concept when you start, but you don't. Fortunately, because if you did, you might go, oh, I'm not so sure about that then. Eckhart Tolle said once, you know, if someone had, when he was pre his enlightenment, someone had said, oh, well, you know, one day you're going to be a famous spiritual teacher and you're going to write best-selling novels and speak to audiences around the world, he would have gone, oh, that's nice. You know, his ego would have been, and then he said, but if they'd said, but you're going to have to let go of everything you currently know and believe to do that, then he would have said, oh, I'm not so sure. You have to drop, you know, the Eckhart character, pre-enlightenment, who was very miserable and unhappy. You're going to have to drop that in order to experience that. Then, you know, the ego's not going to be very sure about that. It's going to be, oh, actually, no, rather the devil I know than the devil I don't.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's just, you know, the powers will come. In fact, he mentioned that he had some healing powers when he started and he was teaching. He said so that he was teaching an ex-nun or something. He was sitting in a one-on-one session with her, and she said, "Oh, I'm feeling the healing. I'm feeling the power of the Holy Spirit. You must be a healer." He's like, "Really? Okay. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting in presence." And that presence was then obviously activating her presence, and then the healing, you know, was activated. But he wasn't really doing anything. There was no active intention. Now I'm going to heal you. So for a while, then people said, "Oh, he's a healer," and he said, you know, that they got too attached to the power. Oh, he's a healer. You know, oh, healer, heal my physical ailment. And then he stopped it. He said, "No, I'm not a healer because I don't want that. I'm actually helping people awaken. I'm healing their soul, their mind and their soul. I'm not here to heal their body." So that would be an example of power, healing power, then being misused. But he realized it and he stopped it. He was like, "No, it's not what I want to teach," to his credit. Whereas if his ego had got involved, you're going, "Oh, now I'm the great healer and I can, you know, market myself as Eckhart the healer," and probably could have done quite well, but not being as powerful as he has been, because really his teaching is about awakening to our true self, which is the ultimate healing of the mind. Who are you? It's the question. Okay, so any other thoughts, comments, or questions on number 2? I think we've done that reasonably well. Number 3.
The seemingly new abilities that may be gathered on the way can be very helpful. And the seemingly new abilities that I may develop on my journey home can be very helpful. Given to the Holy Spirit and used under His direction, they are valuable teaching aids. Given to the remembrance of perfect love and used under its direction, they are valuable teaching aids. To this, the question of how they arise is irrelevant. The question of how they arise is irrelevant. The only important consideration is how they are used. The only important consideration for me is how they are used. Taking them as ends in themselves, no matter how this is done, will delay progress. This needs to be lifted up a bit there.
Caroline?
Yeah, that's it. Perceiving them as ends in themselves, no matter how I do this, will delay my progress. Nor does their value lie in proving anything, achievements from the past, unusual attunement with the unseen, or special favors from God. Nor does their value lie in proving anything for me, achievements from the past, unusual attunement with the unseen, or special favors from perfect love. God gives no special favors, and no one has any powers that are not available to everyone. Pure formless awareness of perfect love gives no special favors, and I have no powers that are not available to everyone. Only by tricks of magic are special powers demonstrated. Only by tricks of magic are special powers demonstrated by anyone.
Yeah, and read it from the top in the alternative.
The seemingly new abilities that I may develop on my journey home can be very helpful. Given to the remembrance of perfect love and used under its direction, they are valuable teaching aids. The question of how they arise is irrelevant. The only important consideration for me is how they are used. Perceiving them as an ends in themselves, no matter how I do this, will delay my progress. Nor does their value lie in proving anything for me. Achievements from the past, unusual attunement with the unseen, or special favors from perfect love. Pure formless awareness of perfect love gives no special favors, and I have no powers that are not available to everyone. Only by tricks of magic are special powers demonstrated by anyone.
Okay, so what's he saying here in summary?
Well, the seemingly new abilities that may develop on this journey home can be helpful if given by this perfect love, remembrance of perfect love under its direction. So they can be teaching aids. But it's how the question is how they arise is irrelevant. It's how they're used. So perceiving them, seeing them as an end in themselves, no matter how I do this, will delay our progress.
And this is the temptation. So a lot of people get what's called a spiritual ego. So they become identified with these powers. Oh, well, look, I'm so cool because, I can walk on water, or I can hold my breath for a long period of time, or I can melt snow with, my body heat, or I can levitate, or whatever, the case may be. And now, I'm special because I've got these powers, and then my ego likes that. So then I spend a lot of time talking about those accomplishments, and I get followers who go, oh, wow, aren't you so special? And there have been many false gurus like this, particularly in the East, because this is where they do these kinds of practices. They develop these powers, but they're not really empowering their followers to discover the true self. They're just building a following based on magic. Oh, this guy's so special and cool because he can do magic. And I've seen it, I've seen it in action. The guy came to South Africa, and this guy was all like starstruck because, oh no, he can manifest things, and he can, and then like I spoke to him about 6 months later, and oh no, it was just very disappointing. Because actually he wasn't really that authentic, and I think he ended up having an affair with one of his students, and the integrity of the self, the true self, wasn't there, although he had obviously some abilities, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the true self. Is that being taught? Is the teacher, walking that path, demonstrating it by their thoughts, their words, their actions? Because that's authentic teaching, man. So all of these powers don't really matter. So Yeshua, Yeshua was he had extraordinary powers, but he didn't really, I mean, he wasn't going around saying, I'm a great healer. He talked about the true self. He talked about the Christ. He talked about the kingdom of heaven. That was his message. He never said, I'm so special because of my healing powers. His healing came from his love. There was a natural expression, extension of his love. And so that was fine. That was in accordance with, in alignment with this course. But as soon as you start getting attached to the identity of it, and now I'm this and that, special healer or special anything, then you're losing the plot, which is what he's saying here. Only by tricks of magic or special powers demonstrated by anyone. Because actually we all have these powers. That's why Yeshua said, and he's really saying this when he said, you'll do these things that I've done and even greater things when you awaken, because he's saying there's nothing special in what I'm doing. So he was deliberately undoing people's belief in this magic that they saw him doing. He was trying to get them out of that and say, no, I'm nothing special. These powers that I have come because of my faith. They come because I'm rooted in pure formless awareness of perfect love, and I help others to find that true self in themselves and free themselves from the belief in sin and guilt. That's why these miracles happen. So anyone can do them. Completely the opposite of the egoic teacher. It's like, no, I'm very special, and no one else can do what I can do because I want to be somehow superior and above everyone else and build a following on that basis. You see the difference?
Mm.
And that's how you tell a false guru from a true one. What's the message? If they're focusing on powers and cities and impressing you with magic tricks, then no, it's not authentic. If they're focusing on the message of awakening to your true self, then they're authentic. And any powers that they may or may not have are incidental. It's like, well, yes, perhaps I've developed some healing abilities or some psychic abilities, but those are just being used in the service of awakening, my awakening and your awakening. That's what they're there for. Not as false idols in themselves, that now, these are something that makes me special. Okay, I think that's quite a clear point. Is that clear? Happy to move on?
It is. Yeah.
So what he's doing here is just, a lot of these FAQs are warning us of temptations, of things, of ways that the ego can get us. He's saying, don't be fooled by it, because I've told you that if some of these powers do start coming to you, don't be fooled by them. Don't let the ego now hijack your mind through these powers and misuse them. All right, so number 4.
Nothing that is genuine is used to deceive. Nothing that is genuine can be used to deceive me. The Holy Spirit is incapable of deception, and he can use only genuine abilities. The remembrance of perfect love is incapable of deception, and it can use only my genuine abilities. What is used for magic is useless to him. What is used for magic is useless to it. But what he uses can be used for magic. But what it uses can be used for magic.
Cannot be used for magic.
Oh, cannot be used for magic. Yeah, cannot. There is, however, a particular appeal in unusual abilities that can be curiously tempting. However, there is a particular appeal in unusual abilities that can be curiously tempting. Here are strengths which the Holy Spirit wants and needs. Here are strengths which the remembrance of perfect love wants and needs. Yet the ego sees in these same strengths an opportunity to glorify itself. Yet my separate self perceives in these same strengths an opportunity to glorify itself. Strengths turn to weaknesses. Weaknesses are tragedy indeed. Strengths turn to weaknesses are indeed tragedy.
It's weakness, yeah, just weakness.
Weakness are indeed tragedy. Yet, so necessarily.
Okay, can you carry on, or should I read?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry, it was just an interruption there.
Just the chef for them.
Yeah. Right. Yet what is not given to this Holy Spirit must be given to weakness. For what is withheld from love is given to fear, and will be fearful in consequence. And yet what is not given to remembrance of perfect love must be given to weakness. For what is withheld from love is given to fear, and will be fearful in consequence for me.
And therefore, be fearful. And consequently be fearful. So I will.
Just interrupt 1 minute.
And I will consequently be fearful. And consequently fear it. And therefore fear it. Let's make it very simple. Okay, so read that from the top.
Nothing that is genuine can be used to deceive me. The remembrance of perfect love is incapable of deception, and it can use only my genuine abilities. What is used for magic is useless to it, but what it uses cannot be used for magic. However, there is a particular appeal in unusual abilities that can be curiously tempting. Here are strengths which the remembrance of perfect love wants and needs. Yet my separate self perceives in these same strengths an opportunity to glorify itself. Strengths turned to weakness are indeed tragedy. Yet what is not given to the remembrance of perfect love must be given to weakness. For what is withheld from love is given to fear, and I will therefore fear it. So,
Yeah.
so if nothing is genuine, oh, did I not do the last one? Yet what is not given the remembrance of perfect love must be given to weakness. For what is withheld from love is given to fear, and I will therefore fear it.
Yeah, you did do it. It's okay. I'll do it again. So what's he saying in this paragraph? In summary.
So anything that is not genuine can be used to deceive us. But of course, the perfect love is incapable of deception and can only use these genuine abilities. So anything that's used for magic is useless. So the separate self sees these same strengths in an opportunity to glorify itself. So these strengths can turn to weakness and then become a tragedy. Yeah. And if it's not given to the remembrance of perfect love, then it can turn to weakness, and the love can go to fear. Yeah. Mhm.
So don't use your abilities for magic, in other words.
Mm.
Magic is believing in form. It's a false belief that form is real. It strengthens the false self. And there's been many people, spiritual initiates and teachers and so on, who've got sidetracked by this because they get these powers, and then the ego gets hold of the power, and they kind of go, "Oh, no, I'm very special because I've got this power." And people are in awe of me. It's like, "Oh, wow, Guru this does this," and then people want to go and see them. They become like a magician rather than and obviously they can make money from that. People will pay to see the show, so to speak, and so then the whole thing gets diverted into magic and strengthening the false self and the ego, and there's no genuine awakening that's happening. So it's a trap. Don't fall into it, is what he's saying. Strengths into weaknesses are indeed tragedy. What is not given to members of perfect love must be given to weakness. So, if the ability is either going to be used by the ego or the Holy Spirit. That's what he's saying. And if
That could
it's
apply to
misused, then
that could apply to talented people like actors and writers and singers.
Yeah.
They've got to
Yeah.
or kick a ball around. They if they don't use it for
Yeah. It can be misused, and then a good example. Like let's take because it's always useful by example to see the contrast. So in football, do you know anything about football? Probably by vicarious.
by osmosis.
There was there two of the greatest players of all time. One was a guy called Pele.
Oh
Heard of
yes,
Pele?
yeah, of
He was
course, yeah.
Brazilian. He won the World Cup 3
And
times.
George Best. And the other one was
Yeah,
George Best.
and so then you could contrast Pele with George Best or Maradona, another one.
Mm-hmm.
So Pele really, he was a very spiritual guy. He was a poet. He was an artist. And he's very disciplined with his talent. He didn't misuse it. He really stayed true, and he was a proper professional, and he conducted himself well. There wasn't any hint of, using drugs and affairs and any of this stuff. And, as a result, in my view, he's the greatest footballer of all time because it wasn't just his ability on the pitch. He was a proper role model for any footballer. You could go, yeah, to be like him, would be being the authentic, the real deal, and being a good ambassador for your country and a good representative of the sport, and doing that consistently for 20 odd years. Then you have the ego, like him, misusing abilities. So take George Best, for example. Hugely talented, maybe even more so than Pele was, massively talented, but he couldn't control his ego. So he used his talent and his good looks to, he was notorious womanizer. Any, woman was fair game. And he drank. In the end, he died of alcoholism because he couldn't handle the ego. So he hadn't mastered that part of his life. And so his talent was wasted. He didn't do full justice to it because he didn't have the discipline of a Pele to go, okay, I'll actually discipline myself and use this talent wisely and correctly. And if you have someone like that who's talented and they have the discipline and the wisdom, then you have a great. Then you'd call that person a great in that sport or whatever the thing is, whatever the particular pursuit is. So that's a good example. Maradona was another, incredibly gifted, but then he misused it and he was into drugs and women and so his success was quite short-lived. He didn't sustain it over 20 years because you can't. If you're snorting coke the whole time, obviously that's going to be problematic for your longevity in the sport. And you could see, from the peak of his powers in 1986, he went down pretty quickly. He wasn't able to sustain that because he wasn't in the right mindset. So he gave his power to the ego, and it was misused for self-aggrandizement. I'm the great Maradona, for pleasure. Yeah, I'm, now can afford to indulge my my personal pleasure of drugs. Who knows what else he was into, and so it comes down to the character. Who are you really? I think Pele had a very good understanding of who he was. The true self was really expressing through that ability. I think he understood that it was like he was expressing something else, a power greater than him, coming through in his football, and that inspired many millions and millions of people to see someone performing at that level with their true self and the integrity and the honesty and all of that he represented. That's, in my view, it made him the greatest footballer of all time. So that's a good example. All right, Kim, you can read me.
So you're comparing Pele with Maradona.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the issue here is psychic abilities, powers. Are psychic abilities desirable? So yes, you're saying, well, you can have certain abilities that develop on your path, but don't get attached to the abilities. It's not about the abilities. The abilities should be used in the service of your true self to help you and others. And so then Elaine mentioned, oh well, like football. George Best was a incredibly talented, one of the most talented footballers ever, but he couldn't control his ego. So he drank too much, he womanized, and so his talent was wasted. He could have been better, but he couldn't be better with those sorts of habits going on in his personal life. Contrasted with someone like Pele, who was very disciplined in his he was brilliant, very talented, but he actually disciplined himself, and so he was able to perform at a high level for over 20 years, won 3 World Cups. As a result, he was probably the sport's all-time great. No one else has ever won 3 World Cups. But he used his talent wisely, and he will go down as a good ambassador for the sport. He was like what every footballer could want to be. You wouldn't want to say to a footballer, "Oh, use George Best as your role model or Maradona as your role model." Some people say Maradona was the greatest ever, but you can't say that because he didn't sustain over the same period of time, and he cheated. He was a cheat in the World Cup semi-final. Famous hand of God is directly cheating. Well, how can that's breaking the fundamental rule of your sport in one of the biggest games ever, to win the match and ultimately win the World Cup. It's not right. So greatness is more than just talent. It's the whole character of the person, which is kind of what he's saying here. Don't be fooled by the magic tricks and the powers that the ego may give you. In the end, this is about discovering who you really are, and that's the authentic self. It says here, none of this can match the glorious surprise of who you really are. You want to read number 6, Kim? Therefore, I let all my learning and efforts.
So do I do one by one?
No, just read this. We've already done this, but just as a recap for you. Therefore, I let all my learning and efforts be directed.
Therefore, I let all my learning and efforts be directed towards this one great final surprise, and I will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to me along the way.
Yeah, and sorry, number 5 as well. Yet nothing I can do can even compare.
Yet nothing I can do can compare even in the slightest with the glorious surprise of remembering who I am. Therefore, I let all my learnings and efforts be directed towards this one great final surprise, and I will not be content to be delayed by the little ones that may come to me along the way. So I guess that's saying that we focus on the end journey, end journey is to know our true selves. It's what powers maybe are nice to have, but not something to identify with. I mean, what kind of example would? Sorry, I got cut off on the way home due to signal. But what kind of? I mean, we're talking about the ones who say they've got either psychic powers or. I mean, you talked about gurus that might have their arms on ice and they don't feel at all. But you know, so I mean, we actually will all have these abilities that might surprise ourselves with as we go on this journey. But this is not to attach to them, but we can use them.
Don't identify with them. That's the key. Don't say, this is now me. Oh, I'm so special because I've got this special power. That's the ego again, which has happened many times. Many gurus in the East, it's common because these gurus and people practice, and so they develop these powers. And then if they're not fully awakened, they go, oh well, this is cool. I'm now talk of the town because I can do this and this, and so and I can actually make quite a lot of money from this as well. So then the ego gets very involved because I can make money from my powers. People will pay to see the magic show. But this is not what the true guru is about. They're like, no, these are just charlatans, and because they're not teaching the truth of the true self. The authentic teaching is, who are you really? Who is the self? And that's all the powers and everything is just directed towards helping you to understand and awaken to that, and help others to awaken to that. There's a guy called Sai Baba. Have you heard of him?
Sai Baba.
Yeah. So yeah, he could do all kinds of magic tricks, so manifest stuff, and people would show up, thousands of people, to see his magic trick. But that's not the point. You're missing the point. It's not about doing magic tricks and manifesting whatever rings, and you'd manifest vibhuti, just some kind of sacred food. It's not. You're missing the point. The point is awaken to yourself beyond form. These magic tricks are nothing compared to who you really are.
I think also people elevate them as well.
Well, then he's like some kind of demigod. He's a Baba. We worship him. This is the guru worship syndrome. When actually, I mean, Yeshua said, I'm the same as you. I have nothing, I have no abilities that you don't have. You shall do these things, he said, that I have done, and even greater things. Now that's a true teacher saying, yuck, I'm actually nothing special. Because he realized he wasn't. All his power came through his connection to source. It came through his love. And because people believed in him, that he was the Messiah, and so there was this huge field of powerful belief that developed around him, then these miracles happened. They healed themselves. As he said to the one lady who touched his cloak, it's recorded in the Bible. I didn't do anything. He said, you healed yourself. It's your faith that's made you well. So he wasn't claiming any special powers. In fact, I think a lot of the time he didn't know how the healings happened. He showed up in his love. He was like, well, I forgive, your sins are forgiven, and I bless you. And there's so much love coming from him that the person dropped all of their ego defenses in that moment. And they believed that it was possible. So they were healed. And they didn't have this medical model that says, oh, no, that's not possible. You can only do it if you go see a doctor, or you go and you get this treatment, or you take this drug. They didn't have that. That system didn't exist then. So they believed. And belief is enormously powerful. Collective belief. So this field of belief developed around Yeshua, and then whenever he went, it grew, because people would believe, and then miracles would happen, so people would believe more. It was like this, and I think he just kind of went along for the ride and went, okay, well, we'll just, You know, carry on showing up in my true self as the Christ in the now, and being in the love that I know is, you know, my reality, and extending that, and just like whatever happens, happens. The miracles happen. Sometimes they didn't. He went to his hometown, and he was asked, well, why no miracles happening here? He said, well, because people don't believe. They know me. You know, he was from Nazareth. Who's this? We know him. He grew up here. He was a little boy. How can he be the Messiah? They said a prophet is not honored in his hometown because people know him too well. And they go, no, he was just little Yeshua. You know, I remember when he was a boy and he went to school and, you know, running around the streets playing with other boys. How now he's claiming to be the Messiah? No, that can't be. So they didn't believe. So he couldn't do the miracles didn't happen. All right, so let's go on to number 5. 2 more paragraphs to go, and then a bit of a summary, and then we'll do a med. So even those who no longer value, you want to read that, Kim?
Even those who no longer value material things of the world may still be deceived by psychic powers. As investment, even those who know, even those who no longer value the material things of the world may still be deceived by psychic powers. As investment has been withdrawn from the world's material gifts, the ego has been seriously threatened. As I have withdrawn investment from the world's material gifts, my separate self has been seriously threatened. It may still be strong enough to rally under this new temptation to win back strength by guile. It may still be strong enough to rally under this new temptation to win back strength by guile. Yet, given a remaining wish to be, many have not seen through the ego's defenses here, although they are not particularly subtle. Many have not seen through their false selves' defenses here, although they are not particularly subtle. Yet, given a remaining wish to be deceived, deception is made easy. Yet, given a remaining wish to be deceived, I have made my deception easy for it. Now the power is no longer a genuine ability and cannot be used dependently. Now the power is no longer a genuine ability and I cannot use it dependably. It is almost inevitable that unless the individual changes his mind about its purpose, he will bolster his powers and certainties with increasing deception. It is almost inevitable that unless I change my mind about its purpose, I will reinforce my powers and certainties with increasing deception.
And read it from the top in the alternative.
Even those who no longer value the material things of the world may still be deceived by psychic powers. As I have withdrawn investment from the world's material gifts, my separate self has been seriously threatened. It may still be strong enough to rally under this new temptation to win back strength by deception. Many have not seen through their false self's defenses here, although they are not particularly subtle. Yet given a remaining wish to be deceived. I'll read that again. Yet, given a remaining wish to be deceived, I have made deception easy for it. Now the power is no longer a genuine ability, and I cannot use it reliably. It is almost inevitable that unless I change my mind about its purpose, I will reinforce my powers and certainties with increasing deception.
Okay, so what's he saying here?
So I think with these, if you come across these abilities or be able to use these abilities,
one might withdraw from like material, so you might not value what's material, but it seems that you value still these psychic powers or abilities, and it's still you identify them and you value them in the sense that it's still reinforcing the ego in a separate self, because withdrawing from the material side, it's like, well, that's deflating the ego. So this is another way of reinforcing the ego. And it may still be strong enough to rally under this new temptation to win back strength by deception. So the strength is being won back by the ego. So there's this deception of this, okay, maybe could be like doing good with these powers, but it's reinforcing that you have these powers as though is special. So now it's the ego is being deceptive in this way. It's not really just using yourself coming through, using these powers for love and helping others.
For awakening. The power is there to show, to demonstrate love. Yeshua, his power was used to demonstrate the power of love. It was all about healing. It was about even if he the miracle of the fishes and the loaves, he fed people. They were hungry. They're sitting there starving. He's like, okay, well, what would love do? It would feed them. And so it's being used to extend love, not to aggrandize a separate self and go, oh, look at how special I am. I'm the greatest one. I'm the Messiah. He wasn't really identified with that. He was very much a servant of love, and saying, actually, I humble myself. I'm a servant, and I will do this in service of my brothers and sisters. The point where he demonstrated that in the Last Supper, he washed his disciples' feet to say, look, I'm your servant. Beautiful. I mean, if you're an ego-based teacher, you would never do that. You'd say the disciples washed my feet, which they would have gladly done. They worshipped him, but he's like, no, I want to show you that actually I'm the same as you. That was such a powerful demonstration of these truths, that he lived, which is why he's, such a great teacher, because he did it by example in his life. Imagine with all of that power, how he could have been tempted to misuse it, but he wasn't. He used it only for good.
Yeah.
And so as a result, he's an authentic teacher. You can follow his guidance. You can follow his way, because look at what he did in his life. Look at his legacy, and look at the purity of these teachings. He's not compromising or wavering or saying, yeah. Some teachers will say, oh, it's a little bit of ego is okay. You need some ego while you're in the world. Not Yeshua. He's just saying, no. That's all got to go. What you want, an insane, vicious monster that's going to cause endless pain, suffering, misery, and death in your mind? You want to tolerate some of that? Really? Or are you willing to let it all go and just accept, who you really are? Pure formless awareness of perfect love, the spirit that you really are. So there's no compromise in his teaching, which is why it's powerful. Because as soon as you compromise and you allow the ego in, actually, what are you believing then? You're believing in a split identity. You're believing in two powers that seemingly both exist, which contradict each other. Well, that's just weakness, not strength, as he points out here. Okay, so okay with number 5.
Yeah.
Showing the number 6 then, the last paragraph. Actually, Kim, Elaine's read half of it. So Kim, you read this one as well. We'll give Elaine a break. And then Elaine, you can do the summary.
Okay.
You can read number 6 in the original and the alternative.
Any ability that anyone develops has the potentiality for good. Any ability that I develop has the potential for good. To this, there is no exception. There is no exception to this. And the more unusual and unexpected the power, the greater its potential usefulness. The more unusual and unexpected the power, the greater the potential usefulness to me is.
Mm-hmm.
Salvation has need of all abilities, for what the world would destroy, the Holy Spirit would restore. Awakening has need of all abilities, for what the world wants to destroy, the remembrance of perfect love wants to restore. Psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the ego. Psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the belief in separation. Yet there is also a great channel of hope and healing in the Holy Spirit's service. Yet there is also a great channel of hope and healing in the remembrance of perfect love's service. Those who have developed psychic powers have simply let some of the limitations they laid upon their minds be lifted. Those who have developed psychic powers have simply let some of the limitations they accepted in their minds to be lifted. It can be but further limitations they lay upon themselves if they utilize their increased freedom for greater imprisonment. It can only be further limitation I impose on myself if I utilize my increased freedom, greater imprisonment. The Holy Spirit needs these gifts, and those who offer them to him and his alone go with Christ's gratitude upon their hearts and his holy sight not far behind. The remembrance of perfect love needs these gifts, and I, who offer them to it and it alone, go with my true self's gratitude in my heart and its innocent perception not far behind.
And read it from the top in the alternative.
Any ability that I develop has the potential for good. There is no exception to this. And the more unusual and unexpected the power, the greater its potential usefulness to me. Awakening has need of all abilities. For what the world wants to destroy, the remembrance of perfect love wants to restore. Psychic abilities have been used to call upon the devil, which merely means to strengthen the belief in separation. Yet here is also a great channel of hope and healing in the remembrance of perfect love's service. Those who have developed psychic powers have simply let some of the limitations they accepted in their minds be lifted. It can only be further limitation I impose on myself if I utilize my increased freedom for greater imprisonment. The remembrance of perfect love needs these gifts, and I, who offer them to it and it alone, go with my true self's gratitude in my heart and its innocent perception not far behind.
Okay, so he's saying here in this final paragraph.
So you can have one can develop abilities and they can be for good, or all can be for good with no exception. And if it's part of the awakening through perfect love, opposite to what the world is trying to destroy. So one is using it for an opposite purpose such as strengthening the belief in separation. That's always quoted here and call upon the devil, but it's been used for not perfect love purpose, but other means which reinforces the ego. So really it's to use these powers are for good, as long as it's through this channel of perfect love. And the powers are really, they come about when lifting up, letting go of limitations, and they come through. So it means anyone can actually, if they do the letting go process, they can actually access these powers and use them for perfect love's service.
Yeah. They're an expression of going to the unlimited, infinite power of God, pure formless awareness of perfect love. And so they just symbolize that in the dream. You become less limited than the ego mind, and so somewhat extraordinary in this world. But actually, you're just becoming more naturally who you really are. The awakened beings, the people with these powers are just people who actually starting to awaken to who they really are, rather than being asleep and dreaming. So Yeshua comes into that society of people asleep, and he's awakened, and he has these powers, and he's a sensation. It's like, where did this guy come from? How's he doing this stuff? They don't understand because they're all asleep. But he says, well, actually, you'll do these things that I've done, and even greater things once you've awoken like I have, because it's actually natural and normal once you're awake to do these things. He's just the only sane one in an insane society. So then, he seems to be very special because of that. But the key thing is don't identify with the specialness. It comes because, you're an outlier. You're awakening, and you may have some powers in an asleep society. See that you're just there to serve them, to help them awaken from their dream. That's your only purpose and function. And then you do it with humility, rather than the arrogance of the ego that's trying to create a false self for itself through the use of that ability. And so I think, the key point is, if these abilities come, offer them to spirit, let them be used for the purpose of your awakening and others, and don't get hijacked by the ego into believing that somehow they give you another special identity, a separate self, and another special identity that's simply not true, because that just prevents your awakening. Then the ability is being used in the service of the devil, as it says.
So that's the last thing. Like, because I mean, I don't know if you'd really offer it up to his gift, just more allowing perfect love to work through you, right?
Yeah. So just, let it be used for love. Like Yeshua is a good example. His abilities, which were quite extraordinary, were used to demonstrate the power of love very clearly. The healings, even things like walking on water. He didn't do that frivolously. He did that to show his disciples that actually, there was something beyond their fear, to show them there's a way out of fear. So it was all demonstrated to demonstrate this thought system of the Holy Spirit and help people to awaken to their own true self and their own Christ's nature and the Holy Spirit. And many did. Many of his disciples did. They certainly learned a tremendous amount, and his teaching has stood the test of time. 2,000 years later, it's still very much there in the Christian religion, and now we're studying, what he truly taught. Would that have happened if he hadn't had the powers that he had? Probably not. He needed to demonstrate what he was saying. So he made such an impact because he was doing his healings, and the various other miracles, and eventually, he raised the dead and he resurrected himself, that demonstrated that what he was saying was true. But it was being used to demonstrate this thought system is true, and so help people to have faith in it. So, it was a good use of those powers. It wasn't used to make him, the only. He never said, I'm the only son of God. I'm the only one. They worship me as some kind of God. He never said that. In fact, he said, you will do these things that I've done and even greater things. So it's a misinterpretation to believe that he's the special son of God. He's the only one, and he's the only way to salvation. You have to believe that he died for you on the cross to atone for your sins. This is a misinterpretation of his message, and just puts the ego back in business. All right, so we've just got a little summary. So Elaine, if you can read this as a recap. Kim, you missed the first couple of paragraphs. This will be a good recap for you. In fact, do you want to read the first 3 or so? Then Elaine can take over, because that was the part that you missed.
Okay. There are no unnatural powers for me, and believing in powers that don't exist is an appeal to magic. However, I recognize that I have many abilities of which I'm currently unaware. As my awareness increases, I might develop abilities that surprise me, but none can compare to the joy of remembering who I truly am. All my learning and efforts are directed towards this ultimate realization.
Okay, so what's he saying in that one? Just recap it.
Well, it says there are no unnatural powers or probably special powers, because we all have these abilities. We're just not aware of them yet. But as we increase our awareness, I'd say through letting go, increase our awareness of more towards who we really are, then we will find that we have these abilities. It says develop. I would just say maybe they just appear. I don't know, like if it works through you. So, but even with these abilities, it's like I guess they're just demonstrations of little inkling of who we really are. So we're probably powerful beyond measure of these abilities that come through. So we need to just direct our learning towards being who we truly are, or remembering who we truly are. And these are just a side note.
They just come. They come or they don't come. That's the point. If you're meant to have healing abilities, then you will, and if you're not, then that's okay. Just by teaching the truth and helping people to awaken to themselves, you're healing their mind. That's the whole point. The healing is happening on a spiritual level. Whether that shows up, in physical, or you have, clairvoyant powers or whatever else, is all just part of awakening to who you are. But you make that primary, and the abilities secondary. Ego will try and reverse that and try and make the abilities primary, and who you are gets buried underneath another false self concept that you've invented based on this ability. All right, so number 2, I accept that certain psychic powers.
I accept that certain psychic powers align with this course. Communication for me isn't limited to the world's recognized channels. These limitations, often based on fear, hinder my direct experience of perfect love. Transcending these limits make me more natural, not more special, magical.
Okay, so what's he saying in this one?
That you might, the abilities that you might awaken to do align with this course, just not to be considered special. They're actually more natural. If there's, I mean, limitations are kind of the opposite. They're based on fear and the experience of perfect love, and letting go of these limitations allow these more natural powers to come through.
Yeah.
But they're not special, magical. They're just, they're considered natural because it's demonstrations towards who we truly are.
Yeah, which is, enormously powerful. There's no limit to God's power because it has no limits. It's infinite and it's eternal. So these abilities just are a symbol of that in the dream. All right, number 3, the new abilities I may acquire.
So just said that last part, Jono. The abilities are symbol we are in a dream. How is that?
The abilities are the symbol of our awakening in the dream. They're a symbol of that which is beyond the dream, in the dream. So we start to have other abilities that are considered extraordinary. It's part of raising ourselves up, above this this battleground of the illusion. When we raise ourselves up into the true self, above the scrum of physical universe of time and space and all its misperceptions, then some abilities might come from this true self that we didn't have previously, and those are symbolic of the awakened mind that's now transcended the limits of its previous thought system. So the abilities just symbolize, but don't make the symbols into the end goal. That's what he's saying, because they're just symbols of this process of awakening, and they really come from pure formless awareness of perfect love. It's that awareness that underlies all of these abilities. So honor the source the source of those abilities by using those abilities to honor the source. They're given to you, give them back in honor of the source, and you do that by extending them out into the dream. Yeshua, when he was doing his healings and his miracles, was honoring the source. He was blessing and healing people who were the same as him to help them awaken to their true self. Okay? So they're not in themselves. Have you read number 3? No. New abilities I may acquire.
The new abilities I may acquire on my journey can be helpful if directed by the remembrance of perfect love. They should not be ends in themselves or used to prove anything, as this would delay my progress. Pure formless awareness of perfect love gives no special favors, and all powers are available to everyone.
Yeah. So thoughts on that? Summary of that?
Yeah, yeah, these abilities that might come through can be helpful if used in a correct way, with perfect love working through me, and they're not there to prove anything in the sense of themselves. They're just they come through based on this as service of perfect love. So don't get identified or attached to them, because that would then delay my progress. And it's not trying to prove like I'm better than someone else, or I have these abilities and someone doesn't, for example, making me feel more special.
Yeah, and Yeshua, said very clearly, he said, I'm nothing special. These, you'll do these things that I've done and even greater things to counter the tendency of people to go, oh, he's so special, he's the Christ, he's the Messiah, which of course they did anyway, but he was doing his best to trying to disillusion them of that.
Yeah.
which, unfortunately people, because they're still attached to the form, they tend to focus on that. And so what was used to grow that, the Christian teaching was Yeshua and his amazing works. It was like, he's the superstar because he's done this and he's done that, and all the miracle stories. Oh, and he's, just to top it all, he's resurrected. And so it became, a cult of the personality about him. But actually that wasn't what he was teaching. He was teaching people to awaken to their true self. And he was just an example of that. And so it kind of got, sidetracked. And this course is his correction of that, saying actually it was much, much more in alignment with the Eastern teachings, the highest Eastern teachings of Advaita, saying just know yourself. And in the Greek philosophy, know thyself, than, worshipping some God out there and his only son who's now had to come and die for your sins. That's not what it was really about. But that was how it developed, because of the people who were asleep. They didn't fully understand what he was saying. All right, so let's carry on. Genuine ability. Let's ask Elaine to read. If you can read those last 3 paragraphs, the last 2 paragraphs, Elaine.
Genuine abilities are not used for deception, and what is used for magic is useless to the remembrance of perfect love. Unusual abilities can be tempting, but strengths tuned to weakness are a tragedy. Anything not
turned, that's turned to weakness.
Oh, turned to weakness or tragedy. Anything not given to the remembrance of perfect love is given to weakness and fear.
Okay, so what's he saying in that one?
Well, if you have the genuine abilities, then it'll only be used for the remembrance of perfect love rather than magic. It can be tempting to use these abilities, but it ends up being a tragedy.
Yeah, what could be used for such good is then misused, and is used to just perpetuate the dark thoughts, evil thought system of the ego. That's what's tragic. And that, that has happened. There's been healers and teachers who had some great gifts, and then they just let the ego kind of hijack them, and so the power of it was misused, and usually didn't end well for them. So yeah, it's a warning. He's what he's doing in these FAQs in the Manual for Teachers is just warning us of various pitfalls on the way that could come, that we need to be aware of. So, having read this, if any of these kinds of powers come, you hopefully see them in their proper perspective, and you go, well, it's not about me and any kind of special self. It's about using this power to serve God, to serve perfect love. That's what it's for. If I use it for that, then the power is being used correctly. And if I start to identify with it and create a separate identity for myself out of that power, then I'm misusing it, and the power is then wasted. It's a tragedy. Okay, so last one in the summary, personal executive summary.
Even as I move away from valuing material things, psychic powers may still have the...
Yeah, do you want Kim to read?
I seemed all of a sudden got a cat and a bit of noise there. Is it okay if Kim could?
Yeah, Kim, do you want to read the last one?
Okay, so from the beginning, hey, even as I move
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
Even as I move away from valuing material things, psychic powers may still have the power to deceive me. Unless I change their purpose in my mind, they can become unreliable and lead to more deception. Every ability I develop has the potential for good, especially if it is unusual. So-called psychic abilities, when they're used in the service of remembrance of perfect love, can be channels of hope and healing. Anyone who has developed these powers has simply let go of some limiting beliefs in their mind. However, using them for further self-imprisonment is a mistake. The remembrance of perfect love needs these gifts, and when I offer them only to it, I will feel deeply grateful and perceive everything truly.
Okay, so what's he saying in that one?
So if moving away from valuing other material things that the ego likes, the danger is if you value these psychic powers, that's still part of the ego. So it's kind of misleading, because it might seem like you're doing good, but and using them well, but if you value them too much or identify with them, that's also as much as going towards a belief of separation. So if they're used with the aim of, well, used primarily just allowing the remembrance of perfect love to work through you, bring hope and healing, that would be the way to go, really, in terms of also just giving your power to remembrance of perfect love, and allowing to work through you, and you'll be doing pure formless awareness of perfect love's work. So, and to do this, it's about to do this as well, to allow for these abilities to come through is forgiveness and letting go of limited beliefs.
Yeah, so don't be sidetracked. Just, if they happen, great. If they don't, so what? It doesn't really matter. It's not about the powers. It's about who you really are. And the true healing, it comes from teaching by example who you really are. So that's what he's saying that you should focus on. And if any powers show up, well, make sure you use them correctly, using them, for the awakening of yourself and others, to demonstrate the power of love. And, as a good example, Yeshua, because he had extraordinary power, but he used it for, correctly for the demonstration of love. To the healings he did were all about helping people to awaken, really, from their limitation, their bondage of the ego, free themselves from the belief in sin and guilt, and then the physical healing happened as a result of that. So he'd always say, your sins are forgiven, when he started his healing, because it was really the healing of the mind that was most important, to heal that person's mind and soul rather than their body, and then the body just followed suit. Okay. So one more, just a key message which sums it all up very nicely in one paragraph. Elaine, can you read this, or do you want Kim to?
Yes, I can read it. I recognize that my natural abilities, including psychic powers, can aid my spiritual journey if directed by the remembrance of perfect love. These abilities should not be ends in themselves, but tools to facilitate my awakening. When I use psychic powers wisely, They contribute to my realization of who I truly am.
Yeah. My realization of who I truly am, and my ability to teach this to others. So, again, Yeshua being a good example of that. His powers were used to help people to understand the teachings. And without those powers, he may not have had that much of an impact. But almost certainly not. People believed in him because of the things he did. It wasn't just his words. It was, what backed it up was the miracles. I mean, well, what he's saying must be true then. Okay. So any other thoughts on this? Based on, I think the key message is pretty clear. So if any of these powers come along, you know exactly what to do with them, and you won't be fooled by the ego trying to hijack them and use them for its purposes.
Well, I
Okay.
suppose some of it might be could be for good, but it's still coming a bit from the ego, right? That recognition.
What are you saying? What could be for good?
If the psychic power comes up, you use it. It might be for good, but it might feel like it's coming from the ego as well. I mean, ego won't necessarily be evil around it, because I think part of being perceptive is doing it for the good. I mean, I'm not saying that if we should consider deception, like, if it's good, and it could be deception, but it might be difficult to discern sometimes.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you have to be, vigilant and aware, no doubt. I think when the special self, when you start identifying with a character, oh, no, this is nice. I've got a special ability now, and I'm getting recognition, and maybe people want to treat me specially, or they give me a special name, or there's the ego, because you don't want to be another special self. You actually want to be done with all conceptions of a special self, all false self concepts, and let those all go. So don't let the ability be used by the ego to hijack you into believing in another form of a special self that's not true. Okay.
Okay.
So any other thoughts or comments or questions on that one? Elaine?
No, it was very clear, actually, yes. Yeah. I guess when it's coming, the good's coming from the ego, then it sort of, it's thinking of itself and emotions come in, whereas if it's coming from the remembrance one, then it just feels right, good, warm.
Enough.
Yeah. It's never about the separate self and about strengthening that. It's about
not
how can you give, how can you share? Is this healing for everyone genuinely? And that Yeshua was a good example of that. It wasn't about him. He was just the instrument of God, of love on earth, just demonstrating the power of love again to people who'd forgotten. And yes, of course, people ascribed, the people who didn't really understand said, oh, he's the special one and he's the only son of God. because that's the specialness again, coming back, trying to interpret what they'd experienced from the ego's perspective. But actually, he was just demonstrating pure formless awareness of perfect love in action in this world, and he could do that because he transcended his separate self. That was no longer there.
So, for example, like the puppy that may or may not live, if we are broadcasting, saying, "Oh, what we've done to help the puppy," then that's coming from the ego. But if we just do it quietly and gently, then it's coming from, yeah.
Whenever you try and get some kind of self-recognition, oh, I'm doing it, but I want other people to know that I've done it, because then they'll think I'm such a spiritual
wonderful
person,
caring person.
wonderful caring person. That's ego. Well, why do you want them to think that?
No, so I can tell when it's coming from the ego. But
the spirit simply says, well, I'll do what's necessary and what's required, and if people find out about it, so be it. But if they don't, so be it. Interesting, because Yeshua would repeatedly instruct people when he'd done his miracles. He said, don't tell anyone. But they did. They couldn't help themselves. He said, don't tell anyone. I don't want to be some kind of, famous star. It's just, I've done this. So there was a kind of, okay, well, I don't want this. I don't want to become some kind of superstar and, get known, but they couldn't help themselves. Don't tell anyone. You just imagine you've been healed from a dread disease of 30 years, like, that woman I mentioned who touched his cloak. 30 years of this blood illness or whatever. She was oozing wounds and stuff. And suddenly she's healed. I mean, of course she's going to talk about it. What? She's like, God, I'm actually healed. And this guy, I just touched his cloak, and, he's going to tell the story because, so he couldn't help it. His fame spread because, if someone's doing that kind of stuff, it's inevitable. People are going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you. Very good lesson.
Yeah, good section. A good section. Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
Okay. So shall we finish this with a meditation on the lesson?
Yeah. That's good. Thanks.
You up for that, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay. So recording going. File. Okay, so just making yourself comfortable. Sitting with your feet shoulder width apart, your back straight. Just cup your hands in your lap, close your eyes. Start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. So breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises and the subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Clench the sphincter muscle to lock the energy in. Draw the energy up your spine into your heart center. Bring one hand on your heart to connect with your heart space. Pull the energy up into the crown of your head. Pausing at the top of the inhale. Smile, scan your mind. Noticing any thoughts, emotions, related body sensations going on. Particularly anything that feels negative, limiting, contracted, constricting in any way. Breathe into that. Nice deep breath in. Remind yourself of today's lesson that this moment, this instant, this moment is the only time there is. So this is the only time you can find healing, the only time you can ever awaken. Is now. There is no other time. There is no other place. There is no other state of mind. So breathe all that in. Embracing this power of the present moment, breathing it into every pore, every cell, every muscle, your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. Is in the true self. This instant is the only time there is. This moment is the only time there is. I'm going to exhale and just release any thoughts, emotions about the past, about the future. This is where resentment and grievances lie, or fear. And let all that go, blow it all out. The breeze of your breath, the nothingness really is. It's going, gone. All the stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. Just rest. In the deep peace of the present moment. Now, breathe in and just listen to these words. I'll read you the words in the alternative translated version of them, of this lesson. So listen as you breathe in, you hold the breath briefly, and then you exhale out through the nose, in and out through the nose, and you're going to speak the words aloud as affirmations of the truth. If you like, you can put one hand in your heart center to really connect with your heart space. So breathing in, as you listen, hold the breath briefly, put one hand on your heart and say, I've conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. So repeat that aloud as you exhale. I've conceived of time in such a way that I defeat my aim. Breathing in again. If I choose to reach past time to eternity, I must change my perception of what time is for. If I choose to reach past time to eternity, I must change my perception of what time is for. Repeat those words as you exhale. Feel into them. Call to change our mind. It's the sole responsibility of the miracle worker or the teacher of perfect love, is to change his or her mind about himself, herself, about the world. Breathing in again. So time's purpose cannot be to keep the past and future one. Time's purpose cannot be keep the past and future one. Breathing in again. Just deep breath in, stomach rises, chest rises, clench the sphincter muscle, lock the energy in, put one hand in your heart center. Feel into these words. The only time which I can be freed from time is now. Quite a profound statement. Only now am I freed of time? Because in the now, there is no time. It's the closest approximation of eternity in this world that we can get to. In this moment, in the end, I let go to set myself free. In this moment, I have let go. So let everything go, whatever's still holding you back, thoughts, emotions, sensations in the body that you're holding on to, just blow them away. Imagine they blowing away the breeze of your breath to nothing as they really are. Going, gone. Lower stomach into the spine, expel the last remaining air out. And the birth of my true self is now, not a past or future. Birth of my true self is now. Feel into that. What does it feel like to be birthed in your true self? To be completely in the present moment, just pure formless awareness of perfect love with no past and no future thoughts. So it has come to breathe in again, to give its present blessing to the world, restoring it to timelessness and love. Just come to give its ever-present blessing to the world, restoring it to timelessness and love. So love is ever present, here and now. So breathe that in, breathe that perfect love, this loving awareness into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. Love is ever present here and now. So feel into that presence, this awakened presence of love, perfect love, pure formless awareness of perfect love is your ever-present awareness. Feel that now, accept it now. This prayer, say thanks. Breathe in this loving awareness into every pore, every cell, every muscle of your body, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being. Say thanks for this moment, my source. I am free now. This moment is the time you have appointed for your extension's release. And the awakening of the world in me. Thank you for this moment. Thank you that I'm free now. Say those words, mean them. So this moment is the time you've appointed for my release, the awakening of the world in me. And so sink into this, just Feeling the love, this pure formless awareness of perfect love. You rest in this contented, complete, whole, perfect. There's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. You just breathe, relax, and be still in this perfect, loving awareness. Surrender into it. For a few minutes of deep, contented silence. Any thoughts come up to seemingly disturb this awareness of love, this loving awareness, then you just notice them, breathe into them, and on yourself. This moment is the only time there really is. It's the only time I can experience love or fear as I choose. I can choose to let go of all fear, embrace love. Imagine blowing away any fear thoughts, anything that's at all negative. And it negates the truth of who you really are. And blow it away with the breeze of your breath. The nothingness that it really is. It's gone. From the lower stomach into the spine, expel it all out. And again, rest in the peaceful present moment. There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, nothing else to think about. And just breathe, relax, and be still. So just coming back gently from this deep connected state, and awareness of the body and the breath, senses and the world. And on the count of 3, you're going to just open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises, subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. Pause at the top of the inhale, you scan your mind. Just notice any thoughts, emotions, body sensations going on. Anything that feels at all negative or unpleasant, limiting, contracted, constricted, breathe into it. Remind yourself that this moment is the only time there really is. And in this moment, I choose love. Choose to experience this loving awareness. So I choose to let all this go. One more time. Exhale. Visualize, imagine this negativity is expelling dark cloud or black smoke out of you. It's leaving you. It's going, gone. Lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. And rest in deep peace and stillness for a few moments. And notice, count to 2, the weight of your body pressing down into the chair, your feet touching the ground, noticing what you're feeling with your hands touching. Maybe there's a subtle taste in your mouth, smell in your nose. Notice what you're hearing in the surrounding environment. Noticing all these things from the still, calm and surrendered state of mind. Not illusions, a state of mind which only the truth is true. Anchor the state in. You're going to set the intention to stay here in this awakened state for the rest of the evening. To help you do that, you can top yourself up with the breath break. Send you, listen to that, to just reconnect with this source, power of this energy. Frequently keep yourself immersed in this wonderful frequency, this energy that is the truth. Is who you really are, loving awareness itself. So now on the count of 3, open your eyes. So just take a moment to look around, observing various things in the room around you in this very clear, calm, peaceful, aware state. Focus on any object your eyes happen to rest on. Notice that this awareness is still there, underlying your perception of that object. You can close your eyes briefly. Maybe that helps you connect with this awareness a bit more deeply, but when you open your eyes, notice that that same awareness is there. Nothing's really changed just because you're seeing things with the body's eyes. So awareness underlies the body's eyes and any sense perceptions. Look around, just another, say, dozen objects, just for a few seconds at a time, noticing each one, noticing this awareness. You can close your eyes or keep them open as you choose, noticing that it's exactly the same awareness, irrespective of whether your eyes are open or closed, irrespective of what you're looking at, whatever you're hearing. Doesn't really matter. So you're training your mind that there's only this deeper awareness, and to stay in touch with that as its primary reality, which is we call awakening. So that brings us to the end of the meditation. I wish you a very awakened and peaceful evening in the present moment. It also brings us to the end of the session. So thank you, Elaine,
Yeah.
for joining
Yeah,
the whole
thank you,
thing.
Jono. That
Kim,
was very
thanks for-
helpful. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for listening.
joining. You joined, yeah, and keep practicing. So tomorrow, just looking ahead to tomorrow, I've got something in the afternoon. Elaine, what's your schedule like? Can you do an evening, or
Yeah, the evening's good.
is the evening better? Can you do
Probably
early
tomorrow. I've got
afternoon
to work tomorrow morning. Yeah,
work? Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean,
So let's
yeah, I can adapt.
let's do a say 7:30. We're gonna have dinner with everyone get up, so we can start at 7:30.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Whichever's easiest. If you prefer the afternoon, but it'd have to be after about 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Got probably a
Whichever's.
meet. I've got a meeting at 2:30.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine.
And
7:30
I've got
would
to
be
go,
good.
so I think 7:30. Yeah. 7:30. Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. See you then.
Okay, thanks, Jono. Bye,
Thanks.
Kim.
Actually,
Bye.
you know what, maybe Elaine, what we can do,
Mhm.
we can split it 50-50. So let's do a afternoon session at 1, and then I'll
Okay.
do an hour and a half or something, and then we can continue in the evening if we haven't finished. Should we try that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
1 o'clock tomorrow. See how we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
good. Thank you very much.
See you then.
Bye.
Thanks, Kim.
Bye, Kim.
Thanks
Namaste.
for joining. Namaste. Yeah. Let me just stop the recording on the YouTube. All right. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you to everyone who joined. If you're watching the live stream and this inspired you, sign up to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, you can also join us in the masterclass early next month, beginning of January, where I'll be talking about the course, Arts Letting Go course, the whole 1-year program, and how to use this to transform your mind and your life radically next year. So just go to theaolg.com. That's theaolg.com. There's a link below this in the comments box for the video. You can link to it and sign up, and hope to see you then. Also, you can get the some of the material, the inspirational quote and the daily lesson, and meditations and breath breaks sent to you via Telegram. Just go to lifepool.com to sign up to that. So, hope to see you on the inside soon. Thanks for listening, and wishing you much peace and love. Namaste. Which means the true Christ self in me acknowledges and honors that same true Christ self in you. Peace and love.